The bell above the door jingled, thin and pathetic, like it was tired of the sound it had to make. Ethan Carrington stepped into the diner, the scent of burnt oil and old mop water hitting him like a slap. His custom coat, black cashmere tailored in Milan, was immediately out of place, the sort of thing you wear to a boardroom, not to a peeling vinyl booth with ketchup crusted on the edge of the table. He hated detours. His driver had hit a deer 3 miles back. Everyone was fine, car included, but the detour was a necessity. And he was hungry. The only visible food establishment on this stretch of nowhere was this diner, Clara's, glowing dimly like a bruise in the rain. He slid into a corner booth, the leather cracking beneath him. A moment later, a waitress approached. "Coffee?" she asked, voice flat, tired, barely a question. And then, he looked up. Time slammed to a halt. Her hair was darker now. The curls were gone, tamed into a tight, efficient ponytail. Her figure was leaner, sharper, like she'd been carved down to the essentials. But her eyes, gray-green like salt water about to storm, those hadn't changed. "Lena?" he said before he could stop himself. Her hand jerked, the coffee pot sloshing against the side of the mug. She caught it before it spilled, reflexive. Only then did she look at him, really look at him. For a long second she said nothing. Just stared then. "You have the wrong person." He smiled, slow. "You were never good at lying." She stared. "Ethan," his name came out like a verdict. He sat back, stunned by the weight in her voice. The last time he'd seen Lena Moore, she'd been standing barefoot in a dorm hallway, clutching a red folder and trembling. He'd called her name, but she didn't look back. That was 12 years ago. Now she was pouring coffee in a truck stop diner off I-84 like none of it had ever happened. "What the hell are you doing here?" she asked. "I was going to ask you the same thing." Her jaw tightened. "Do you want food or just small talk?" His smile faltered. "You don't want to catch up?" "Catch up?" she repeated. "Like we're Facebook friends who lost touch after freshman year?" "I didn't mean it like that." She gave him a look so flat it could have cracked glass. "Menus laminated. Specials are on the board. I'll give you a minute." She walked away before he could say another word. Ethan watched her go. The motion in her body wasn't fluid like it used to be. She walked like someone who was used to being invisible and working hard to stay that way. And he hated that. Hated seeing brilliance dimmed, genius boiled down to muscle memory. He flipped open the menu, though he didn't read it. A minute passed, then 2. She came back with a pad. "Know what you want?" "Avocado toast," he said, a beat. "Kidding, eggs, whatever's edible," she scribbled. Didn't look up. "You disappeared," he said quietly. "You vanished, Lena. You didn't come looking. I tried." "You blocked me." "Changed your number." "Your parents said you moved," her eyes flickered. "I did. Why?" She looked down at the pad in her hand, then slid it into her apron. "I'm not that person anymore, Ethan." "I don't buy that." She leaned in, not flirtatious, furious. "You're sitting in a booth in my diner, wearing a coat that costs more than my rent, sipping coffee I didn't have time to freshen, and you still think you can read me like a textbook, but you don't know anything about me. Not anymore. I know enough to know something happened, something bad." Silence. The lights buzzed overhead. Rain tapped against the windows like someone too shy to knock. "You left in the middle of your thesis," Ethan said. 2 weeks before your dissertation defense. You had offers from Yale, Stanford, Harvard Med. Then suddenly you were gone. I asked everyone. No one knew anything. I said, drop it. He did, for now. She turned to leave again, and he said quietly, "You were brilliant, Lena. You changed the way I thought. About people. About myself." She froze. Then she muttered, not turning around, "You should have kept walking." 10 minutes later, she returned with a plate of overdone eggs and toast that looked like it gave up halfway through toasting. She slid it in front of him, then stood there. "Not moving, I'm sorry," she said low. He looked up. "For snapping at you." "I get it." "No, you don't," she said, quieter. "You can't," he hesitated. "What happened?" Lena pulled out the other chair, sat down across from him like it hurt to do so. Her hands trembled just slightly. Enough for Ethan to notice, but not enough that she'd admit it. "I had a baby," she said flatly. He blinked. "Jamie, he's 9 now. Sweet. Smarter than I deserve. Funny, too. Looks like his father." Ethan's throat tightened. "Were you married?" She laughed once, bitter. No, just young and stupid. I thought love looked like chaos. I was wrong. He nodded slowly. He left, she continued. Well, first he lied, then cheated, then hit, then left. Silence again. I couldn't finish school. I lost my funding. My advisor, her voice caught. He died. You remember Professor Adler? Yeah, Ethan said, chilled. They said it was a heart attack, but it wasn't. It was stress, pressure. He tried to protect me from what they were doing, from what I saw. Ethan's pulse ticked. What did you see? She looked him dead in the eye. Things you don't get to walk away from. He wanted to press, but something in her face said, not now. I'm sorry, he said instead. Don't be. Her smile was hollow. You got out. You made it. I didn't get out, he said. I climbed over a lot of people to get where I am. Some of them didn't deserve it. She stared at him, then said carefully, Why are you really here, Ethan? I got stuck. Road closure. I swear. And the odds of you walking into this place? About 1,000,000 to 1. She leaned back. You believe in signs now? He shook his head. I don't believe in signs, but I believe in timing. She stood up again. Well, your timing's 12 years too late. But something in her voice, it cracked. And when she turned away this time, she didn't walk quite as quickly. Ethan watched her go, that feeling returning, like the world had split open just enough to let a second chance slip through. The rain had turned to sleet by the time Lena refilled Ethan's coffee. Her hands were steadier now, her movements automatic. Years of pouring, carrying, smiling through had etched the motions into muscle memory. But Ethan still watched her like she was something rare. You don't have to look at me like that, she said. Like what? Like I'm a before and after photo. I'm just trying to remember, he said quietly. It's been a long time. Lena didn't answer. She pulled the notepad from her apron, scribbled an order from a trucker at the bar, and walked away without looking back. Ethan stirred his coffee. The spoon clinked against ceramic, a rhythm he didn't realize he was keeping until it stopped. He remembered her laugh first. It had been sharp, not girlish, not coy. Lena had laughed like she knew the joke before you told it, like the whole world was just one long, strange experiment, and she was the only one smart enough to find it funny. 12 years earlier, Westwood University, Office of Student Research. Is this really what you're using your brain for? Lena was sprawled on the couch in Ethan's dorm, flipping through his intro to coding notes like they were gossip columns. A dating app that uses heart rate sensors to predict attraction? It's the future, Ethan said, typing furiously. It's garbage, she shot back. You know what the human brain does under arousal? It lies. It conflates danger with attraction. That's why people fall in love during war zones and horror movies. You're just mad because psychology's squishy. And you're mad because people like me make your algorithms look flat. Ethan grinned. God, you're annoying. You're welcome, she said, biting into an apple and tossing the core into his trash can with perfect aim. Back then, she was magnetic, ruthless in debate, gentle in friendship. They'd been inseparable, not lovers, but something heavier. The kind of bond that defied classification. She was the only person who could shut Ethan down in a boardroom pitch and then ask him to walk her home 5 minutes later. She drank her coffee black, read Freud and Foucault in the same breath, and once told him she wanted to study trauma not to fix people, but to witness them. No one wants to look at suffering, she'd said once, during a walk across campus under gold November trees. But that's where the truth lives. In the parts we flinch from. He hadn't understood it then. He did now. Present-day Clara's diner. You're quiet, Ethan said as Lena returned with a fresh pot. You used to never shut up. I talk plenty. Just not to men in $3,000 coats. You always were good at math. Scholarship girls are, she said dryly. He wanted to ask. About the thesis. About Adler. About the night everything shattered. But he could feel the line, thin, electrified, dangerous between curiosity and trespass. So instead he said, You were working on something before you left. Your thesis. What was it called? She gave him a long look. Then softly, Trauma and Memory Retention in High-Stress Environments, a challenge to standard forensic testimony. That's right, Ethan said, leaning in. God, that was, what, grad-level research? I was 20, she murmured. Adler pulled strings to get me early access to the grant archive. We were designing a study with law enforcement trauma victims. It was real. It was dangerous. But it meant something. And then? He asked. What happened? She hesitated, looked toward the kitchen, then back at him. Flashback Westwood campus. 3 days before she vanished, Lena slammed a manila folder onto Adler's desk. You didn't tell me. Adler looked up from his terminal, the weight of exhaustion pulling at his face. Tell you what? The patient files you used. You said they were anonymized. But they weren't. I traced one. Officer Gellert. He's dead. Shot himself 3 weeks after the interview. I told you not to go into the files, Lena. You used active trauma victims for your sample group. Without consent. You lied. He stood, slow and heavy. You think I don't care about them? I think someone paid you not to. Adler stepped closer. You're walking into something bigger than you understand. And you're protecting someone, she said. Silence. Then he whispered, Don't come to my office again. That night, he died. Heart attack, the paper said. But the photos Ethan had seen later, the way the apartment was torn apart, the shredded notes, the broken glass told a different story. Present day. I told someone, Lena said suddenly. Ethan blinked. What? I told the ethics committee. About Adler, about the files, the funding. I was scared, but I did it. And then, he died, Ethan finished. She nodded. They came after me next, she whispered. My funding disappeared. The committee told me there was no clear evidence. The other students turned. I was labeled unstable. I got the message. What message? She looked up at him. Her eyes weren't stormy anymore. They were dead calm. Shut up. Or be erased. Ethan exhaled. Why didn't you come to me? You were already rising. Building Carrington Dynamics. You had investors, boards, cameras. I couldn't drag you down. You think I would have cared? Yes, she said. Which is why I didn't. There was a long pause. The diner hummed with the sound of lives going on. Trucks passing, forks scraping against plates. Quiet country radio playing a song no one remembered the words to. You still have the research? He asked. She looked at him for a long time. Then she reached into her apron and pulled out a small battered USB drive. Set it on the table. This is all I have left, she said. The rest was taken, scrubbed. Taken by who? People with more power than sense. People who didn't want trauma to become science. He picked up the drive. It felt strangely heavy in his hand. Why give this to me? I didn't, she said, standing. You took it. And then she was gone, disappearing into the back kitchen, through a swinging door that groaned like it carried the weight of her story. Ethan sat alone, the USB in his hand, staring at the space she just vacated. Lena Moore. She used to be genius. Now she was a waitress with trauma behind her eyes, a son to protect, and a secret powerful enough to get a tenured professor killed. He'd come in for eggs. He was leaving with something far more dangerous. The next time Ethan came into Clara's, Lena didn't flinch. She saw him through the window first, same coat, same confident gait, but this time, he didn't pretend it was coincidence. He walked in like he owned the place, like he owned most places, and sat at the same booth as if he'd never left. She approached, pen in hand. You back to slum it with the rest of us? She asked. Back to see you, he said plainly. She blinked. Careful. You almost sounded human. He nodded at the chair across from him. Sit? She hesitated. Then checked the clock. The early crowd was thinning. Carol could cover the floor for 5 minutes. Fine. But you're tipping double. She sat down across from him, arms crossed. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on the table. All smooth charm and something under it, urgency maybe. Or guilt. I want to offer you something, he said. I don't do charity. It's not charity. Really? Because last I checked, billionaires don't recruit their college dropout friends from diners unless they're bored or guilty. He didn't smile. I'm not either. She didn't move. But her jaw tightened. The coffee pot hissed behind them. The smell of burnt toast clung to the air. I run a portfolio firm, Carrington Strategic. We just bought a health tech company in Manhattan. It's bloated, full of bloatware execs. I'm cleaning house. I need someone sharp, organized, unafraid to tell me when I'm being a dick. Sounds like a job for your therapist. Already fired him. Lena let out a short breath. You want me to be your assistant? Executive assistant, he corrected. High level. In Manhattan. 6-figure salary. Benefits. Private school for Jamie. Health coverage that includes pediatric trauma therapy. That last line landed like a hammer. How do you know he needs therapy? She asked, voice flat. I looked into you, he admitted. Of course you did. I had to. I'm not going to drop you into my world blind. And if I'm being honest, I was worried about you. Lena's throat tightened. She stood abruptly. This is insane, is it? Ethan remained seated, calm, dangerous. You said it yourself, your world erased you. I'm offering a way back in. Back into what? She snapped. Corporate bullshit? Elitist politics? Being someone's glorified scheduler while they cash checks and sell futures they'll never live long enough to see? I used to want more than that. You still do, he said. She stared at him. You don't belong here, Lena. You're wasting away. Your research, your brain, your voice. It deserves a platform. Yeah, she said. Well, the last time I had a platform, someone died. He didn't reply. She turned away, took 3 steps toward the counter, then stopped. Does the job come with housing? He looked up. Yes. And relocation for Jamie? Yes, she turned around slowly. Her voice shook now, just slightly. I can't afford his speech therapy. The insurance I get from the diner barely covers his inhaler. He's starting to ask questions about why we move every year, why I always look over my shoulder. Ethan's expression softened, then say yes. 2 weeks later, New York City, the doorman at the Willoughby held the door for her like she was royalty. Good morning, Ms. Moore, he said with a warm nod. Lena mumbled something back, dragging Jamie's hand as he bounced beside her, marveling at the marble floors and the concierge's uniform. The apartment Carrington Strategic provided was absurd. 3 bedrooms, high ceilings, appliances that responded to voice commands. Her son had his own room for the first time in his life. A school across the street with security cameras and a garden on the roof. The morning light through the windows was so clean it felt fake. Lena stood in the kitchen, watching Jamie eat organic yogurt he couldn't pronounce. She should have felt grateful instead. She felt hunted. Carrington Strategic HQ 5th Avenue. The first day on the job was a blur of glass, metal and polite smiles with sharp teeth behind them. She met with Ethan's chief of staff, a woman named Dana, who looked at Lena's resume or lack thereof with a neutral expression and said nothing. Ethan introduced Lena to a handful of execs, most of whom nodded vaguely and moved on. By lunch, she was in a glass office overlooking Central Park, logging into a secure drive with credentials Ethan had hand-delivered. Her official title, Special Assistant to the CEO, her unofficial role, Fixer, Gatekeeper, Shadow. Keep me organized, Ethan had said. Keep me honest. But as the week went on, whispers started. A finance VP passed her in the hallway and whispered, "So that's her?" Someone in marketing asked if she was the waitress. She heard scandal in a coffee break room, Westwood, in a late-night elevator. And on her 3rd day, someone left an unmarked envelope on her desk. Inside was a clipping of a 12-year-old article. Westwood professor dies suddenly amid student misconduct rumors. Her hands went cold. That night, at home, Lena sat in the dark, laptop open, the cursor blinking over an empty document. She wanted to write it all down. The study, the files, the way Adler had looked at her before he died, the names she'd been forced to forget. But every time she tried to start, her chest tightened, her fingers froze. Jamie called for her from his room. "Mom?" She shut the laptop. "I'm here," she called back. The next morning, she stepped into Ethan's office and closed the door. "I'm being watched," she said. He looked up from his tablet. "By who?" "Your people. Someone left this." She tossed the clipping onto his desk. He stared at it for a moment, then looked up. "You knew this would happen," she said. He didn't deny it. "You knew bringing me here would stir this up, that the people who buried Adler wouldn't stay quiet." "Yes," he said. "And I brought you anyway. Why?" "Because I think you deserve to finish what you started." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "You want to be the hero now? I want to be the friend I should have been then." They stared at each other for a long time, then Lena said quietly, "This is going to get ugly." "I'm counting on it," Ethan said, The moment Dr. Warren Feld saw her name in the Carrington Strategic Press memo, he stopped mid-sentence during a morning interview with The Atlantic. And the work we're doing with PTSD remapping in correctional populations, excuse me. Can we take a quick break? The journalist blinked. Sure? Warren stood, walked out of frame, closed the door to his home office. The camera light still glowed. He didn't care. He opened his tablet, zoomed in on the memo. Carrington Strategic welcomes Lena Moore as special assistant to CEO Ethan Carrington. There was a photo attached, blurry, a cropped LinkedIn shot, but unmistakable. Her 12 years ago, he and Adler had argued about her in that dingy campus office. Warren had said she was unstable, a risk, too young to handle classified case files. Adler had insisted she was brilliant, insightful. Lena had been neither. She had been dangerous. He remembered the night Adler called him in a panic. Said Lena had accessed something, the Gellert files or worse. That she was going to report them to the ethics board. That she had already told someone in the media. Warren had calmed him down. Told him to keep her isolated. That he'd handle it. Less than 48 hours later, Adler was dead, and now, she was back, and she was working for a man who had the resources to finish what she'd started. Carrington Strategic. 47th floor Lena stood at the edge of the glass, New York shimmering below her like a diamond cracked in half. Why is Feld trending again? She asked, gesturing to Ethan's tablet. New book, he said. He's rebranding again. Trauma and Triumph, a neuroscientist's journey through human recovery. Number 2 on the Times list. She looked away.
That man's never recovered from anything but his own lies. You know him?
Everyone in the psych department did. He was Adler's friend, mentor actually. But he hated me. Why? Because I saw through him. He smiled with his mouth, but his eyes were dead. I told Adler once after a faculty party that Feld didn't read people. He collected them. Like data, like trophies. Ethan looked up. You think he had something to do with Adler's death? Lena didn't answer. She didn't have to. Flashback, Westwood Campus 2013. Lena waited outside Adler's office, arms full of case notes. She was supposed to be prepping for their presentation to the Trauma Ethics Board, but Feld came out first. He closed the door behind him gently. Turned to her. You're Lena, she nodded. You're Dr. Feld. I've heard a lot about you, he said. His tone was pleasant, but cold. You were reviewing the case files? I was advising Adler on legal boundaries. Legal boundaries? She echoed. Some of what you're suggesting in your thesis, challenging forensic testimony, proposing limits on victim interviews, it crosses into dangerous ground. Truth is dangerous, she said, but necessary. He smiled, no warmth. Be careful, Ms. Moore, the academic world isn't as protected as you think. And then he left, humming to himself. Present day that night. Lena stayed late. The office was empty except for the night security and the cleaning crew. She pulled up Carrington's encrypted cloud archive, used her clearance to open the executive background dossiers. She searched Warren Feld. No result, of course. Too clean. So she tried another path. She logged into the Westwood Digital Archive. Using an old student ID she wasn't sure would still work. It did. She navigated to the 2013 Ethics Board minutes. There it was. Meeting 11/13/2013. Complaint from Lena Moore. Subject: breach of consent and trauma research by faculty mentor, Adler. But it had been dismissed. Without cause. Another file email from Warren Feld to chair of ethics committee. Subject: concerns re Ms. Moore's mental stability. She opened it. Read the lines. While I respect Ms. Moore's intelligence, I've observed increasingly erratic behavior during her internship. Her academic rigor is compromised by personal emotional instability. I advise we treat any claims with caution. There it was. The kill shot. He hadn't discredited her research. He discredited her. The next morning. Someone buried me, Lena said, slamming a file on Ethan's desk. And I can prove it. He flipped through the printouts. Ethics board memos, email snippets, redacted minutes. Her original complaint, scanned, time-stamped. They built a narrative, she said, that I was unwell, emotionally compromised, even though I was the only one asking questions about protocol violations. This is enough to reopen a university investigation, Ethan said. And what? They'll slap a warning label on a ghost? Ethan leaned forward. You want more. I want accountability. I want Feld to answer for what he did. To Adler, to the patients, to me. Then let's go get it. Elsewhere. Feld's private practice, Upper West Side. Warren stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back. She's not staying quiet, he said into the phone. A voice on the other end responded. Low, calm. You said she was unstable. She was, but now she has Carrington. Then discredit them both. Warren's jaw tensed. He's too powerful. So were you. Once. Click. Warren turned away from the glass, his reflection warping against the pane. She was going to ruin everything, unless he ruined her first. Carrington HQ. Midnight. Lena sat in Ethan's office, staring at the printed email again. He called me unstable, she said. That was enough. Ethan looked over. For what? For them to take away everything. She looked up, eyes gleaming, not with tears but with fire. Now I'm taking it back. Lena had learned long ago that betrayal doesn't come with fanfare. It comes quietly, in a folder left open, in a voice that hesitates just a second too long, in the moment you realize someone you trust has more to lose than you do, and Ethan Carrington had everything to lose. Carrington HQ, Executive. Floor, 7:42 p.m. Lena sat alone in Ethan's glass-walled office, the skyline glowing behind her, untouched files stacked on his desk. She was waiting for the IT logs. 10 minutes ago, she'd messaged a trusted engineer from Ethan's own cybersecurity team, a woman named Priya who owed her a favor from last week. Lena hadn't said much, just that she needed access to Project Phoenix. A minute later, the zip folder landed in her inbox. Ethan was still in his board meeting downstairs. He wouldn't be back for another half hour. She clicked open the files. At first, it looked innocuous. Just a tangle of research grants and internal memos from Carrington Medical, a former biotech startup now folded into Carrington's Strategics, sprawling portfolio. But then she saw the date 2013, and then she saw the recipient Dr. Warren Feld. A memo, approval of grant 19 FE PTSD, pattern recognition and forensic interviews. Funder, Carrington Medical Research Division. Lead advisor, Dr. Warren Feld. Supervising consultant, Dr. Charles. Adler. Lena's chest tightened. Another file, a legal settlement. Confidential. Consent waiver agreement for study 19 FE participants, retroactive. Authorization via institutional override, Westwood University IRB. Executed November 14, 2013. Signed by Adler, Feld, and E. Carrington, Executive Advisor. She blinked. No, it couldn't be. Ethan. He found her still sitting at his desk, hands in her lap like they didn't belong to her. Long day? He asked, tossing his blazer over the back of a chair. Why didn't you tell me? She said without looking up. Ethan froze. Tell you what? Her voice was ice. That your company funded the study that cost Adler his life. Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. He didn't deny it. He didn't have to. You were part of it, she said, standing now. You signed off on the funding. You were an advisor. You were in the room, Ethan. I didn't know the full scope. Don't insult me. I was 24, he said, his voice low, urgent. They pitched it as trauma pattern detection. Cutting edge. They said it was about reforming witness protocols to avoid re-traumatization. They didn't say anything about coercion or suppressed consent. Not to me, she stared at him. And you didn't look deeper. I didn't know I had to. Lena's face cracked into something bitter. That's what people always say when they help ruin someone. I didn't know. I didn't mean to. Lena, please, did you know Adler tried to pull out? She said. The week before he died, he told me he wanted to go to the press. He said Feld lied to everyone. That the files were falsified. Ethan stepped forward. If I had known. But you didn't want to know, she snapped. You were building an empire. You had no time for the consequences. He was silent. She could feel it now, the gap. The one between their worlds. Hers carved out in blood and loss. His paved in opportunity and plausible deniability. You brought me here to help me or to control the narrative? Both, he said quietly. She blinked. His honesty stunned her. I brought you here because you deserved justice, he continued, but also because I knew if this came out, Carrington Medical would be named. My shareholders would revolt. The media would eat it alive. So you thought you'd get ahead of it. I thought I could protect you. No, she said, shaking her head. You wanted to own me. That's not true. It's exactly what Feld tried to do. His face fell. Don't compare me to him. She stared at him, breathing hard, her hands clenched at her sides, then slowly she stepped back. You're not like him, Ethan. Relief flickered across his face. You're worse. Lena didn't sleep that night. She lay awake in her too-soft bed in the high-rise apartment Ethan had arranged. The city noise somehow quieter than her own thoughts. Jamie stirred once in the next room. Called out for her. She went to him, lay beside him until his breathing slowed. Then she went to the kitchen and opened her laptop. If Ethan wouldn't give her the truth without strings, she'd take it herself. Meanwhile, Feld's private estate. Hudson Valley Warren poured himself a scotch, fingers shaking. She's digging, he said to the man on the other end of the line. She's been digging, came the voice, calm, measured. She's got Carrington. And Carrington has shareholders, the voice replied. He'll break before he burns. I need this to go away. A pause. Then maybe it's time we remind her what happens when people get too curious. The night Lena filed the suit, it rained like the world was trying to scrub itself clean. She watched the drops hammer the courthouse steps from the back of the cab, heart pounding so hard it drowned out everything else. In her bag was a carefully compiled complaint, 38 pages of hell, naming Dr. Warren Feld as a central figure in a pattern of ethical malpractice, research manipulation, and wrongful academic suppression. And at the center of it all, Dr. Charles Adler's death. Here, she told the driver. She stepped out into the downpour without an umbrella. By the time she made it inside the courthouse, she was soaked to the bone, shaking with cold and something else, rage, fear, justice. They all blurred together now. 2 days later, it begins. The story exploded before the papers were even stamped. Billionaire's assistant accuses famed psychiatrist of research scandal and cover-up. Survivor or saboteur, Lena Moore's shocking accusations divide academia. Justice for Adler trends after wrongful death suit filed. The press wanted a villain. The press wanted a victim. Lena knew they wanted both in the same woman. At Carrington HQ, Ethan stood by the window of his office, jaw clenched as Lena's face played across the muted news broadcast. She was in a navy coat, holding Jamie's hand, flashing past reporters and microphones outside the courthouse. She's already received over 100 death threats, Dana said, crossing her arms. She's not backing down, Ethan replied. No. But if Feld's legal team decides to strike back, she'll be forced to testify. That opens discovery. That opens everything. Ethan looked away. He knew. Lena wasn't just walking into a courtroom. She was walking into a war zone. At home. Manhattan apartment. Lena didn't flinch when she found the envelope taped to her door. She peeled it off. Eyes cold, hands steady. Inside was a photo of Jamie at school. In the park. On a swing, the note read, "Drop the suit, or lose more than your name." She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just walked into the living room, sat across from Jamie, and said, "We're going to stay somewhere else for a while, okay?" He looked up from his drawing, wide-eyed. "Is it because of the bad man?" She froze. "What bad man?" Jamie looked down. "The one who followed us home." He had glasses. He was watching, her stomach twisted into a knot. "When did you see him?" "Tuesday." She forced her voice to stay calm. "You didn't talk to him, right?" "No. I remembered what you said." She pulled him into her arms and held him there for a long time. That night, Ethan's penthouse Lena stood in front of Ethan's desk, holding the photo in one hand, the thread in the other. "You said you'd protect us," she hissed. "I will," he said. "They know where he goes to school. I'll pull him out. I'll hire round-the-clock security." She shook her head. "That's not enough. I need names. Who's backing Feld? Who stands to lose everything if this goes to trial?" Ethan hesitated. That second, the pause before truth, was all she needed to feel the doubt bloom again. "You're still protecting someone," she said. "I'm protecting you," he snapped. "But if you tear down the whole system, you might get crushed in the rubble. Then help me build a new one." Their eyes locked. "Please," she added. The word brittle. He nodded once. "I'll get you what you need." Meanwhile, Feld's estate Feld scrolled through the photos on his burner phone. Jamie on a swing. Lena in the courtroom. A grainy shot of her speaking with a journalist outside a coffee shop. "She's not stopping," he muttered. "You want her gone?" asked the man across from him. "No," Feld said. "I want her discredited. You tried that once. Didn't work. I didn't have this much power back then." He reached into a drawer, pulled out a file labeled More. Lena, Psych Eval 2013, falsified, unverified, but signed by a licensed clinician long since retired on hush money. "Let's remind the world why she left Westwood," Feld said. "Let's remind them what unstable looks like." The next week, Court of Public Opinion. Anonymous leak to the New York Post triggered a second media storm. Exclusive. Former Westwood student who sued psychiatrist once deemed psychologically volatile. They ran the psych eval in full. Suggested bipolar tendencies. Accusations of paranoia. Claims she had fantasized faculty retaliation. Lena stared at the article in disbelief. "That file is a lie," she said. "A complete fabrication." Ethan looked at her. "We can have it forensically debunked. I'll hire the best legal team in the country." "No," she said. "This doesn't need spin. It needs truth." She called a press conference 3 days later. Press conference, the cameras clicked like insects. The lights were hot. The room was full. Lena stood at the podium, her notes untouched. "I know what they're trying to do," she said. "They're calling me unstable. Again. Just like they did 12 years ago when I tried to report research misconduct that endangered real people." She looked out over the crowd. "Here's the truth. I did leave Westwood. I did struggle emotionally, because I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. Because the man who believed in me, Dr. Charles Adler, died after trying to blow the whistle, and the people responsible tried to bury it. With me." Silence. "Today I filed an amended complaint," she continued. "Not just for wrongful death, but for criminal negligence, research abuse, and obstruction of justice. I've submitted sealed evidence to the Department of Education and the DA's office, and I will not be intimidated into silence again." A single voice called out from the press pool. "Ms. Moore, are you worried for your safety?" Lena paused. Her voice cracked just slightly as she said, "I'm a mother. I've been worried every day since I gave birth. But I'm also a witness, and the truth has waited long enough." Later that night, apartment. Darkened. Jamie was asleep. Lena stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the street below for signs of the man with glasses. Behind her, her phone buzzed. A new message. No sender ID. "You want truth, Lena? Start with Ethan. Check Project Mirror." A friend. She stared at the screen, then copied the words into her notebook, under a new heading. "Who's still lying?" The deposition took place in a beige, windowless conference room that smelled faintly of bleach and old coffee. A long wooden table, leather chairs, bottled water, sterile silence. Lena sat at the center, hands folded, eyes dry, to her left. Her attorney, a sharp-jawed civil litigator named Dana Kim. To her right, the court reporter, recording every blink, every breath. Across the table sat Dr. Warren Feld, flanked by 2 of the most expensive legal wolves in Manhattan. They smelled weakness like blood. The door closed with a soft click. It began. "Ms. Moore," said Feld's lead attorney, a thin-lipped man named Carlin. "Let's start with your history. You attempted suicide at age 16. Is that correct?" Dana Kim stiffened. "Objection. Relevance." Carlin held up a hand. "It speaks to psychological history, your memory's reliability and emotional state during the events in question." The stenographer kept typing. Lena took a slow breath. "Yes," she said. "I did." Carlin didn't even blink. "And you were hospitalized for 8 days at a facility in Bucks County?" 7, Lena corrected. "I left AMA. And since then you've been prescribed 5 different medications for anxiety and depression?" "Yes." "Would you say you've struggled with distinguishing emotional reality from objective fact in times of duress?" "No," she said. "I'd say I've fought like hell to be heard in a world that treats trauma survivors like liabilities." Dana Kim allowed herself a tiny nod. Carlin moved on. They questioned everything. Her scholarship, her diagnosis, The disciplinary record that Feld's team had dug up from Westwood, manufactured, Lena knew, but still there. Then came the witness. Carlin stood and opened the side door, and in walked Melanie Rush. Lena's stomach dropped. Melanie had been her roommate at Westwood, her closest friend, the one who brought her soup when Adler died, the one who helped pack her things in silence. Lena sat up straighter. "Ms. Rush," Carlin said, "you attended Westwood University from 2011 to 2015? "Yes." "You were roommates with Lena Moore for 3 of those years?" "Yes." "Did she ever confide in you that she suspected Dr. Adler of manipulating research or feared retaliation?" Melanie glanced at Lena, then she smiled, tight, rehearsed. "She said a lot of things, but Lena, she often exaggerated. She had trouble trusting anyone. Even me." Lena's mouth parted. Carlin stepped in. "Would you say she was emotionally unstable during her final semester?" Melanie didn't blink. "Yes." "Did you witness any delusional behavior?" "Yes." "Thank you, Ms. Rush." Lena stood. "You were with me when I found the falsified files. You saw the email from Feld." Carlin. "Ms. Moore, you cried when Adler died. You said they were going to erase him." Melanie wouldn't meet her eyes, and just like that, it was over. Afterward, empty hallway. Lena leaned against the wall outside the deposition room, her hands shaking with rage. Dana Kim stood beside her, silent. "She sold me out," Lena whispered. "They bought her." Dana nodded once. "It happens. Feld's team is playing dirty. That means they're scared. I don't care if they're scared. I want them buried." Later that night, Ethan's penthouse. Ethan poured 2 glasses of whiskey. "She said you looked like a child," he muttered. "That's how they framed it. A girl playing at justice." Lena took the glass but didn't drink. "They made me small on purpose, and they won't stop. I know." He sat across from her, tired. "There's a settlement on the table, confidential, 7 figures. No admission of guilt." Lena turned her head slowly. "You're telling me to take it?" "I'm telling you to think about Jamie," he said. "You could disappear. Start over. Fund your own research. Help people without burning every bridge in the country." She stared at him for a long time. "That's not what this is about." Ethan exhaled. "Then what is it about, Lena?" She stood, walked to the window. The skyline pulsed outside like a warning. "I was 16 when I tried to kill myself," she said. "And everyone decided that was the most important thing about me. Not what I survived, not what I built. Just that one choice." She turned. "I spent my whole life fighting to be more than my pain, and now they're trying to weaponize it against me." Ethan said nothing. She stepped closer. "This isn't about a paycheck. It's about being able to look my son in the eye and tell him they didn't win." He nodded, but slowly, hesitantly. She could see it, the calculus. The way his mind was already counting costs, and it broke her heart. Flashback. A dorm room. 2013. Lena and Melanie sat on the floor, eating cereal from plastic bowls. "I think Adler's scared," Lena whispered. "He said Feld warned him not to publish." Melanie frowned. "Warned him how?" Lena didn't answer, just stared at the wall. Melanie reached over, touched her wrist. "Hey, you're not alone, okay?" Lena had believed her. Present day, apartment kitchen. That night, Lena pulled Jamie's blanket up to his chin. "Are we going to win?" he asked sleepily. She brushed his hair back. "Yes," she said. "We are. Even if they're mean. Especially then," he smiled. "You're like a superhero." She laughed softly. "A tired one. Still a hero." Meanwhile, Feld's office. Feld flipped through the deposition transcript, eyes narrowing. "She didn't break," he muttered. "She should have. She's not afraid of you anymore," said the shadowy voice on speakerphone. "She should be. Then remind her what silence is worth." Feld lit a cigar and smiled. The news hit, like a bullet to the chest. Custody temporarily revoked. Lena Moore's mental fitness questioned following court filing. The headline ran alongside a photo of Lena clutching Jamie's hand. His face blurred, hers not. Her mouth open mid-sentence, caught in motion. They always picked the worst frames. Inside the article, false claims were cited, that she'd yelled at Jamie in public, missed therapy appointments, been volatile. Every accusation traced back to an anonymous concerned citizen. Feld's fingerprints were all over it, and now Jamie was gone, temporarily placed with his paternal grandmother in Scranton, a woman Lena hadn't spoken to in years. "They said it's not punishment," her lawyer had told her gently. "Just precaution." Precaution. That word clawed at her ribs like a blade. Outside the courthouse, 2 days. Later, she never saw the man's face. 1 second, she was unlocking her car. The next, a hand slammed into the back of her head. She stumbled, hit the pavement hard, the breath knocked clean from her lungs. "Drop the case. You lying bitch," someone hissed in her ear, a boot pressed into her back. Then he was gone. By the time she crawled into the front seat, her lip was split, her vision blurred. She didn't call the police. She didn't call Ethan. She didn't cry. She went home, rinsed the blood from her mouth, and opened her laptop. At Carrington HQ, 2 floors, above Ethan stood before a wall of executives, the press team pacing in the corner like panicked wolves. "This is unsustainable," his COO snapped. "You're emotionally compromised. The company's name is being dragged into a lawsuit that could trigger a full-blown ethics investigation, and your assistant is being portrayed as a psychotic whistleblower." "She's not psychotic," Ethan growled. "She's toxic," someone else said. "And until this case is closed, she's a liability." Ethan looked at them all. The sharks, the suits, the empire he'd built brick by bloody brick, they were right. And so, later that afternoon, a brief press release went live. Carrington Strategic has no further comment on the Moore-Feld litigation. Ms. Moore is no longer affiliated with any active Carrington project. We remain committed to scientific integrity and consumer trust. The betrayal hit Lena's inbox at 4:03 p.m. 4 minutes later, the building security badge access to her apartment was revoked, alone again. This time, she allowed herself to fall apart. In the mirror, her face was bruised, her lips swollen, her trust obliterated. Even Ethan, who had once promised her protection, had chosen safety over truth. She stared at the blank wall in her apartment, the silence thick as smoke. "You made me a villain," she whispered, to Feld, to Melanie, to Ethan, to the whole damned world. "You needed me to be." That night, an old flash drive, she hadn't thought of it in years, buried in the lining of an old duffel bag from college, behind old baby clothes and tax returns, the last gift Adler ever gave her, a silver flash drive pressed into her hand the night before he died. "Keep this safe," he'd said. "Don't open it yet. Not until you have to." 12 years later, her hand still shook as she plugged it in. One file, password protected, she typed in what she thought it might be. Mirror. The file opened. A video. Adler sat in his Westwood office, pale, sweating, disheveled. Across from him, Warren Feld, pacing like a man on the edge. Adler's voice was low, urgent. "You're falsifying consent forms, Warren. You're violating every ethical code we swore to uphold, Feld. Don't be dramatic. These subjects volunteered. Some of them are even benefiting. Adler, you forged retroactive permissions using students' credentials." Feld stopped pacing, looked directly into the camera lens. "Turn that off." Adler, "Not this time." Feld took a step closer. "You go public with this, Charles, and I swear to God you won't make it to Monday." Adler, "Is that a threat?" Silence. Then Feld said something cold and final. "It's a guarantee." The recording ended. 2 hours later, Lena's apartment. She uploaded the video to 3 encrypted cloud folders, sent one to her lawyer, one to an investigative journalist at ProPublica, and one to Ethan, no message. No warning. Then she opened Twitter breaking. Leaked video appears to show Dr. Warren Feld threatening colleague days before his death. Thread. Here's what you need to know about Project Phoenix, Westwood University, and why Lena Moore just became the most dangerous woman in American psychiatry. The post went viral in 20 minutes. By morning, it would dominate every screen in the country, and Lena Moore, bruised and branded, was now the one holding the match. Across the city, Ethan's penthouse, he watched the video 3 times, then deleted the press release, then stared at the message Lena had finally sent him. "You protected him with silence. I'll destroy him with truth. Don't call." Across the country, Feld's estate. Feld threw his phone into the fireplace. His lawyer tried to speak. Feld raised a hand. She just signed her death warrant. Downtown, in her bed, sleepless, Lena curled into herself, body sore, heart hollow. She knew what came next. The subpoenas. The public war. The character assassination on steroids. But she also knew what she'd bought with that leak. Time, truth, and maybe, just maybe, Jamie's future. She closed her eyes. No hero's triumph, just the low, steady hum of defiance. The line outside the courthouse wrapped around 2 city blocks. Camera crews elbowed each other for space. Protesters chanted on both sides of the barricades, "Justice for Adler! Protect our doctors! Lena Moore is a liar!" Inside, the air buzzed with heat and nerves. This wasn't just a trial, it was a reckoning. Day 1 opening arguments. The prosecution, led by Ada Samuel Reiner, stepped to the podium. Dark suit crisp, voice steady. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about silence. Manufactured silence. And the extraordinary cost one woman paid to break it." He laid out the framework, the unethical psychiatric study, forged consents, the sudden death of Dr. Charles Adler, and a multi-million-dollar effort to bury it all. Then he nodded toward Lena. She was labeled unstable, fragile, hysterical. But what she is brave. And we will prove that this wasn't madness, it was murder cloaked in medicine. The defense stood. Carlin, Feld's silver-haired attorney, exhaled like he was already bored. This is not a trial about ethics. It's a media circus orchestrated by a woman with a long-documented mental health history, seeking fame, money, and revenge. He turned toward Lena. She is not a hero. She is a performance. And performances unravel under pressure. Day 3. Ethan takes the stand. The room sharpened when Ethan Carrington walked to the witness box. Camera lenses zoomed in. Viewers at home leaned closer. Even Lena wasn't sure which version of Ethan she'd get. Her friend, her betrayer, or the CEO protecting his empire. Reiner approached first. "Mr. Carrington, your biotech subsidiary funded the controversial study known as Project Phoenix, correct?" "Yes." "Were you aware that the study used falsified consent waivers?" "No." "But you signed off on institutional override forms?" "I was 24. I didn't understand the implications at the time." Reiner raised an eyebrow. "Is that your official stance?" "I didn't know." Ethan's jaw clenched. "It's the truth." Reiner moved closer. "Did you encourage Lena Moore to pursue her legal claims?" "I did." "Then why did your company issue a public statement severing ties with her mid-investigation?" A pause. Cameras clicked. "Because I was under pressure from my board." "So you chose business over justice?" Ethan's gaze flicked to Lena, then back to Reiner. "I made a mistake." Reiner stepped back. Carlin rose for cross-examination. "You were romantically involved with Ms. Moore at any time?" "No. Ever emotionally entangled. I cared about her. Enough to blur professional boundaries?" "No." "Enough to let her weaponize your company to wage a personal vendetta?" Ethan's voice dropped. "No one weaponized anything. Lena Moore was telling the truth. And we all failed her." Lena blinked. It wasn't absolution, but it was the first time he'd said it in public. Day 6. Feld takes the stand. Feld wore a gray 3-piece suit, unbothered, calm. He adjusted his cufflinks before speaking. "Dr. Adler was a troubled man," he said smoothly. "Brilliant, yes, but unstable. I believe his death was a tragedy, but it wasn't a conspiracy. Reiner was surgical. You're seen threatening him in a video days before his death. A heated discussion, not a threat. You say Lena Moore is mentally unwell, yet multiple students came forward corroborating her story. They were confused, influenced by her. She had a gravitational pull toward drama. You mean she was persuasive? I mean she was dangerous. Like Adler was dangerous?" Feld shifted. "Adler's paranoia led him to paranoia in others, Lena Moore included. You've denied any knowledge of falsified consents, correct?" "Correct." Reiner dropped a bombshell. A new email, found in Carrington's server logs, where Feld had thanked Ethan for discretion on the signature issue. Feld blinked, then smiled. "I meant discretion around budget timing. No one in the jury bought it." Day 8. Lena takes the stand. The courtroom fell to a hush. The world was watching. Lena walked slowly, shoulders squared, eyes unreadable. Her lawyer gave her a slight nod as she sat. Reiner's voice was softer now. "Ms. Moore, tell us what happened the week before Adler's death." Lena looked out at the courtroom. She saw Dana, Ethan, journalists, activists, and Feld, smirking, unreadable. "I was working on a research project. Unpaid, but I believed in it. I wanted to help trauma victims." Her voice was steady, but her hands gripped the edge of the stand. Dr. Adler found evidence that Feld's team was modifying consent forms, approving vulnerable patients for experimental interviews without their real approval. She paused. "They used people like me, trauma survivors, poor students, patients from underfunded clinics. They assumed we wouldn't fight back. And when Adler tried to stop it," Lena's throat tightened. "He said he feared for his life. I told him to go public. He died 2 days later." The jury leaned forward. Reiner nodded. "How did that affect your life?" "They erased me," she said simply. "I was discredited, diagnosed behind closed doors, labeled paranoid. I lost everything. And when I tried to speak up, I was told I was hysterical." Her voice cracked. "But I wasn't hysterical. I was right. And now?" She looked straight at Feld. "I'm a mother. I'm a witness. And I'm still standing." Cross-examination. Carlin returns. He smiled like a snake. "Ms. Moore, you've admitted to past mental health crises. Why should the jury trust your memory?" "Because I documented everything." "Isn't it true your own best friend testified you were emotionally unstable during college?" "Yes, because she was paid to." "You're not a psychiatrist. You're not a lawyer. What qualifies you to interpret what happened?" "I was there. You see yourself as the hero here?" "No," she said. "I see myself as the one who wouldn't shut up when it got dangerous." Day 10. Final statements. Reiner's voice was clear. "This isn't just a case about academia or ethics. This is about what happens when someone in power decides no one will believe her." He gestured to Lena. "She's not perfect. She's not polished. But she's telling the truth. And truth matters more than polish." Carlin closed with venom. "This is a woman with a vendetta propped up by media and emotion. She wants to win a moral war without evidence. She wants to tear down a man's life because she couldn't hold hers together." He turned to the jury. "Don't reward chaos with conviction." Day 12. Verdict deliberation. The world waited. Live streams ran for hours. The hashtag Lena Moore trial topped every platform. Lena sat in a cold waiting room, staring at her hands. She didn't pray. She didn't hope. She just breathed. A door opened. The jury was ready. The jury's verdict came on a gray, rain-soaked afternoon. The courtroom held its breath. Lena gripped Jamie's small hand under the table. His fingers curled tightly around hers, fragile and grounding. The judge's voice rang out, deliberate and final. "On the charge of obstruction of justice and unethical medical practice, we find the defendant, Dr. Warren Feld, guilty." The courtroom exhaled. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled furiously. "But the charge of murder? Not guilty." Lena's heart sank and lifted all at once. Justice was partial, painful, but undeniable. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered, some cheering, others shouting, fractured voices in a fractured victory. A journalist pressed the microphone near Lena's face. "Ms. Moore, does this verdict bring closure?" Lena looked down at Jamie, who had hidden his face in her coat. She swallowed hard. "Closure isn't a thing you get handed," she said quietly. "It's something you fight for every day. This is a beginning. Custody battle." The following weeks blurred in a whirlwind of court orders and supervised visits. When the final custody hearing came, Lena sat across from the judge, exhausted but unwavering. The judge nodded after reviewing new evidence, including the fallout from Feld's conviction and the damage to Lena's reputation. "Custody will be restored to Ms. Moore with joint visitation. Rights granted to the paternal grandmother," the judge ruled. Relief flooded through her in waves. Jamie smiled, a fragile, honest smile, as she hugged him tightly. Civil damages and fallout. The civil suit against Feld's estate concluded quickly. Lena won damages, not enough to erase years lost, but enough to secure Jamie's therapy and a modest new start. Ethan's empire wasn't unscathed. His board forced him to step down as CEO temporarily. Share prices dipped, yet beneath the surface, Ethan worked in silence, rebuilding, repairing the fractures his empire had sustained. A public statement followed. Ethan Carrington remains committed to transparency and ethical leadership in science and business. Rebuilding and reckoning. One evening, months later, Lena found herself walking the campus where it all began. Westwood University. Autumn leaves crunched beneath her boots. The buildings stood the same, but everything felt different. Jamie tugged at her sleeve, curious. She knelt beside him, voice soft and steady. "This is where I lost everything," she whispered, her eyes tracing the towering library walls, the long paths she once walked with dreams. "But this is also where I took it back." Jamie looked up at her, eyes wide. "I'm proud of you, Mom." For the first time in years, Lena smiled without restraint. Epilogue. A quiet strength. Lena's fight had changed her. She was scarred, cautious, but unbroken. She knew the world was cruel to women who dared speak out, to mothers who fought monsters. But she also knew something vital. No one escapes pain unmarked. No one gets out clean. And sometimes, the fiercest victories come with the deepest wounds. She held Jamie close, breathing in the sharp air of the campus grounds. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it was hers.